Most people crossed the street when they saw her. She sat on an old milk crate outside the corner of 59th and Halstead in Southside Chicago, wrapped in layers of coats no matter the season, her fingers moving through the air like she was playing an invisible piano. Sometimes she whispered to herself. Other times she'd shout into the wind like it was whispering back lies. A few called her Miss Elaina. Most called her that crazy lady by the laundromat. She was there in the mornings, before the buses, rocking back and forth, her hands cupped like she was catching sunlight. She never begged, never asked for money. But she had this thing she'd do. Reach out suddenly and press her hand gently to someone's wrist or shoulder as they passed. "You all right, baby?" she'd say, in a voice so calm it could hush thunder. Most jerked away, muttering curses, or ducking their heads. "Don't touch me," some barked. "She's touched," others whispered. "Schizo or something." But the regulars noticed strange things, like how she always seemed to hover near the right person at the right time. The man who collapsed from a stroke outside the barber shop, she was already beside him, murmuring in his ear. The old woman, with the shaky legs who never fell because Elaina was there with a trash bag cushion before she even stumbled. The toddler who wandered too close to the street, Elaina had snatched her up without breaking her rhythm, as if she'd seen it happen before it did. Most people ignored these things because to notice them meant you'd have to see her, and seeing her meant you'd have to admit the city had left someone behind. But Jalen saw her. He was 10, skinny and smart, always wearing a backpack 2 sizes too big and a hoodie his cousin had outgrown. Every morning before school he passed her on the corner with his head down. He never said much, just nodded, sometimes offered her half a muffin if they had extras at home. And she'd smile, this gap-toothed, worn-out kind of smile that somehow made you feel like she'd just blessed you. "You got that fire in your chest today," she said one morning. Jalen blinked. "What?" She pointed to his collarbone, not touching him this time. "Feel that pressure like a balloon in your ribs?" she said softly. He blinked again. "How'd you know that?" She just smiled. "Tell your mama to skip the peanut oil. You got lungs like dry leaves, too dry for fried food." Jalen told his mother that. She laughed, said Miss Elaina needed to mind her business. But later that week his asthma flared so bad they spent the night in the ER. He didn't forget. By late October, the leaves had dropped like feathers over the cracked sidewalks, and the wind turned sharp. Miss Elaina wore a navy trench coat now, torn at the sleeves but buttoned proud like someone used to being somebody. Then it happened. It was a Monday. Kids were late to school, buses stalled in traffic, sirens always echoed somewhere in the distance. Jalen had his earbuds in, listening to a math podcast he didn't like but needed for tutoring. He was halfway down the block when he felt it, this strange electric stillness in the air, like something holding its breath. He turned back. Miss Elaina wasn't in her crate. She was standing in the middle of the sidewalk, staring at the corner store. Then she ran fast, too fast for someone her age and frame. She darted between people, her voice rising, not panicked but firm, urgent. "Out the way, out the way. He gonna drop." Inside the store, a man, maybe late 30s, in work, boots and a city jacket, was swaying near the back fridge. No one noticed, until his body folded like a coat rack, arms twitching, head cracking the shelf on the way down. Chaos broke. Someone screamed. A phone came out. Another fumbled with 911. But Miss Elaina was already there, kneeling beside him. "Baby," she whispered, brushing back his hair. "Come on now, come on back. Breathe deep, breathe with me." His lips were blue, foam gathered at his mouth. His hands clenched into claws. But she was there, pressing down on his sternum, tilting his head, whispering a rhythm like a lullaby mixed with prayer. People started yelling, "She's hurting him. Get away from him." Somebody call. Someone. But someone already had. The ambulance pulled up within minutes. EMTs stormed in with urgency and protocol. "Step back, ma'am," the younger one barked, but the older one froze. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Elaina," he said, stunned. "Elaina, you're still here." She looked up, hands still on the man's chest. "He's got another 30 seconds before his rhythm flatlines. You got the paddles, or you want me to keep going?" The EMT blinked, then nodded. We got it." As they moved in, she stood slowly, bones creaking, her hand hovering one last time over the man's heart like a benediction. The younger EMT looked confused. "Who is she?" he asked. The older one didn't look away from her. "She's why I'm alive," he said quietly. 12 years ago, same spot, different me." Jalen was standing near the door. He saw it all, heard it all, and when Miss Elaina walked back to her crate like nothing happened, like the world hadn't shifted around her, he followed. Word spread slowly on the south side, first like a cough, then like a choir. By Friday, people weren't crossing the street when they saw her, not all of them at least. Some still hurried past like she didn't exist, pretending the sidewalk wasn't shared. But a few lingered, just a second or two longer than usual. A glance, a hesitation, a memory of what they heard in the shop or on the bus. "You hear what happened at Carter's Mart? That dude would have died if not for that crazy lady." "Nah, she's not crazy, she's something else." Miss Elaina never changed. She still sat on her crate, humming, coat buttoned up to her throat, a coffee cup beside her with no sign, no plea, just the slow steam rising into the morning chill. Her fingers still moved through invisible threads, tracing air currents like they whispered secrets only she could hear. But there was one difference. People started saying her name. They said it soft, like it might shatter. "Miss Elaina, you need anything from inside?" "Elaina, you good out here today?" "Miss E, you got that firewood vision for me again?" Jalen kept watching. He started walking slower past her in the morning. Sometimes she wasn't looking. At him, and he'd get a strange ache in his chest like missing the sound of your name in a dream. But when she did see him, she'd nod and say something strange but warm. "Your blood's too sweet today, sugar boy. Lay off the cocoa. Or watch out for that kid in homeroom. He's carrying a sore heart and sharp elbows." Jalen always pretended to brush it off, but he started noticing more, how people came and went from her corner like it was a confessional, as he. Young mother left a banana and walked away with wet eyes. An old man in a veteran's cap slipped her a mint and walked off, breathing easier. A teenager, shaking and covered in hives, sat beside her for 15 minutes, and by the time he left, the swelling had gone down, and he smiled like he hadn't in years. And still no one quite knew how she did it, but Jalen would be the first to learn something nobody else had seen. It started with a sheet of paper, crumpled, tucked under the milk crate. He saw her drop it when a gust of wind scattered the corner with junk mail and receipts. She bent to pick it up, but her knees gave out a little, and she muttered, "Lord, these bones are plotting against me." Jalen stepped forward without thinking. "I got it, Miss Elaina." She smiled and let him help. He handed her the page. She started to tuck it back into her pocket, but he'd already caught a glimpse. It was handwritten, neat, in tiny print. Dozens of names, no title, just names and numbers. Some had check marks, some had symbols. He tilted his head. "What's that?" She looked at him. Really looked. Not with suspicion or defense, but with a sort of quiet measuring, like a grandmother deciding if you were old enough to hold the good china. "You nosy?" she asked. He shrugged. "Only when I care." She smiled then. That tired, knowing smile. "It's my list," she said softly. "People I'm keeping warm." Jalen blinked. "Warm?" She nodded, folding the page with care and sliding it back into a plastic bag inside her coat. "See, some folks walk around colder than they know. Not just skin, not just breath. Cold like they'd been left too long in sorrow or pain or fear. Cold like nobody remembered their name when it mattered. So I write them down and I warm 'em little by little. Jalen didn't know what to say. So he sat next to her for the first time. They watched people pass. The neighborhood didn't notice him there. But he noticed everything now. Miss Elaina tapped her knee gently as she watched a man hobble by with a limp and an old work jacket. "Mr. Dorsey," she murmured, almost like prayer. "Rheumatoid bad again. I'll bring him some lavender oil when the moon turns full." "Do they know you're helping them?" Jalen asked. "Does a flower know who planted the seed?" She said with a soft chuckle, "Don't need to, still blooms." That weekend, something strange happened. Jalen saw two white men get out of a city vehicle, badges around their necks, heavy boots, frowns for days. They walked straight toward Miss Elaina. One was talking into a radio, the other pointing toward. Her Jalen was across the street by the bus stop, but his stomach flipped fast. He ran. By the time he got there, they were already trying to lift her crate. "Miss," the taller man said, "you can't keep setting up camp here. It's not zoned for whatever you're doing." She just looked at them, patient as a clock. "I'm not camping," she said simply. "I'm waiting." "Waiting for what?" the man grunted. "For who needs me next." Jalen's fists clenched. "Leave her alone. She saves people." The man glanced down. "And who are you, son?" Jalen stepped forward, heart thumping. "I'm the one she saved before I got sick. She knew. She always knows." The second man narrowed his eyes, but before he could say anything, a new voice cut in from behind. Back away from her. It was the older EMT from the store. His uniform was half unzipped, like he'd just jumped out of a vehicle. Behind him, a city nurse and a community board member were getting out of a car. "Miss Elaina," the EMT said gently, "we've been looking for you." She tilted her head. "Took you long enough." The nurse approached with cautious respect. "We were wondering if you'd consider working with us. Part-time, no pressure, just being where you already are." Elaina looked at them, at Jalen, at the sky, and then she nodded once. "I'll stay where the warm needs holding," she said, and for the first time in a long time, nobody tried to move her. They brought her a new milk crate, reinforced, with a cushion, and the corner of 59th. And Halstead never felt quite the same again. By the time the first frost painted the window glass with lace, Miss Elena's corner had changed. There was no ribbon cutting, no grand announcement, but something sacred had settled on that patch of sidewalk. Something like trust. The bodega owner started sweeping the concrete in front of her crate each morning, even leaving out a thermos of hot coffee with a note, "Only for Elaina. The rest of y'all get your own." The barber next door set a chair outside on warmer days and called it Elena's throne, though she never sat in it. She liked the crate, said it kept her close to the ground, closer to people's footsteps and the hum in their bones. Jalen still stopped by most mornings, sometimes with a story, sometimes with a sandwich. He didn't ask questions anymore. He just watched and learned. And then one morning something new happened. A boy stood across the street, not moving, not blinking. He looked maybe 8, maybe younger, bundled in a hand-me-down coat with a ripped sleeve and boots that didn't match. His face was blank, but not from boredom, from something else. Like the world was too loud inside his skull, and he was holding his breath against it. Elaina saw him first. She didn't wave, didn't speak. She just looked up, nodded once, and tapped the edge of her milk crate beside her. The boy didn't move, at first, but after a long minute he crossed the street in that stiff, careful way of kids who've been punished for taking up space. He sat beside her, not speaking. Elaina didn't ask his name. She just reached into her coat, pulled out a tattered notebook and handed him a pen. The boy blinked. Then, slowly, he started to draw. Jalen came by half an hour later and saw them sitting like statues. Elaina, humming under her breath, The boy hunched over the notebook, pages full of symbols, spirals, and storm clouds. Jalen crouched beside them. "Who's he?" he whispered. Elaina didn't look up. "A mirror," she said. "Most people don't know they're broken till they see their cracks in someone else." Jalen looked at the boy, then at the notebook. There was a picture of a man with a fist for a head, a woman with no eyes, a child curled up like a comma. Elaina gently placed her hand over the boy's wrist. "You hear thunder sometimes when no one's talking, don't you?" The boy blinked fast, then nodded. "You feel like you're shaking even when you're still," another nod. She said. "Then you ain't broken, just vibrating different. That's all, the world needs your song." Jalen stayed beside them all morning. The boy didn't speak, but he didn't run either. He kept drawing. Eventually a woman showed up, her breath fogging the air, her hair wild with panic. "Deshawn," she called. "Boy, what did I tell you about wandering?" She ran across the street and froze when she saw Elaina. He don't usually, he never—" Elaina stood slowly. "He's safe and warm. You can thank him for that." The woman looked confused. Elaina pressed the notebook into the woman's hands. "He said plenty. You just got to learn his language." The woman took the book like it was made of glass. Her lip trembled. "I didn't know he drew like this." Elena's eyes softened. "You ever sit still long enough to see him try?" The woman bit her lip, blinking fast, then softly, "Thank you." "Don't thank me," Elaina said, returning to her crate. "Just listen better next time." That evening, after the sun dipped behind the rooftops and the wind started licking at the bricks, a black SUV pulled up across the street. A woman in a suit stepped out. Polished. Too polished for this block. She walked with purpose, heels too. Clean for cracked sidewalks. Jalen was still there, helping Miss Elaina wrap her shawl tighter. The woman approached with a nervous smile. "Elaina Jones?" Elaina didn't answer at first, just squinted. "I'm with the Department of Community Wellness. We've been receiving stories about you." Elaina arched a brow. "You mean the ones that sound too good to be true?" The woman hesitated. "The ones that sound too consistent to ignore." She reached into her folder and pulled out a glossy brochure. "We'd like to offer you a temporary position as a trauma outreach partner. Training, a stipend, a safe place to stay. You could teach others, work with children. You'd have an office." Elaina looked at the paper, then up at the sky, then she chuckled. "An office?" she said. "Baby, I got the whole block. But surely this would be safer, warmer." Elaina turned her head slowly toward Jalen. "You warm, sugar?" He nodded. She looked back at the woman. "Then I'm doing all right." The woman looked confused, frustrated. "You're turning down a paid position?" "I ain't turning nothing down," Elaina said, standing up. "I'm holding this space. Sometimes that's more valuable than a paycheck." She walked past the woman, her coat flaring behind her like a flag. Jalen followed without asking. Behind them, the woman stood in silence, brochure fluttering in the wind. And in the notebook the boy had left behind, a new drawing waited on the last page, a street corner glowing with golden light, and a woman sitting in the middle of it, head lifted, eyes closed, hands resting on a world no one else could hold. Winter dropped early that year. By mid-November, frost clung to the wrought-iron fences like spiderwebs turned silver. The wind coming off the lake stung the skin and didn't ask permission. People on the south side walked faster, talked less, heads down, breath curling like smoke from invisible fires. But Elaina stayed. Her milk crate was now lined with old quilt scraps. The thermos from the bodega was replaced twice a day by one of the barber's teenage sons. A local church had dropped off an umbrella to shield her from the sleet, and someone anonymously left a pair of weatherproof boots beneath her coat one morning, just her size. She never said thank you, but she wore them, and she kept warming the ewe. Block Jalen was there almost daily now. He'd started bringing his notebook not for homework but to track who came by. He'd made columns, name, time, what they said, what she said back. At first it felt like spying, but Elaina had caught him peeking and simply said, "Good. Somebody's got to remember the small things." That afternoon he was scribbling down what Miss Elaina had told a woman grieving her lost father. "He ain't gone if your memory's still loud." When a patrol car rolled slowly down Halstead, Jalen didn't think much of it at first. Cops came and went. Sometimes they nodded, usually they didn't, but this one stopped. The engine idled, the door opened, and out stepped a white officer, tall and wide like a retired linebacker, but with shoulders curved inward and a right hand that trembled ever so slightly as he closed the door behind him. Jalen froze. He watched as the officer approached, his walk stiff, almost reluctant. A man used to being feared, not welcomed. Miss Elaina didn't blink. "Afternoon, detective," she said. Jalen whipped his head toward her. She hadn't seen the badge. She hadn't looked at the patch, but she knew. The officer paused mid-step. "How did you—" "You got grief in your boots," she said softly, treading like they still remember blood. He stood there a moment, jaw tight. Then he sat, right on the curb, near her crate. Not too close. He looked down at his hands. "They said you help. People." Elaina nodded once. "Sometimes I just listen, that's all some folks need." He swallowed. "I was the first on scene. Back in July. Domestic call turned wrong. She had a baby in her arms." Jalen looked away. "I followed protocol," the officer said, voice thin. "I said the words, did the steps, but he, the husband, he ran at me with nothing but a lamp. I—" His mouth closed. His hand twitched. Elaina didn't interrupt. She waited. After a long silence, he continued. "She died 3 days later. Complications. I filed the report, got cleared, but the baby—" He blinked hard. "He's in foster care now. I see his face every night when I close my eyes. And I can't hold my gun without this." He lifted his trembling hand, making me feel like a threat. Elaina reached into her coat, pulled out a pouch of dried lavender, lemon balm, and something Jalen didn't recognize. She pressed it into the officer's palm. "Hold this when you sleep," she said. "Breathe it deep. Let your guilt know it's been seen. That's the only way it'll settle." The officer stared at it like she'd handed him his own heart. Then he whispered, "I don't deserve that kind of grace." She looked at him, stern but kind. "Then earn it. Grace ain't a gift. It's a garden. You tend it, or you lose it." He stood up slowly, clutching the pouch like it was evidence. "Can I come back?" "You already did," she said. He didn't look back as he walked to the car, but Jalen swore the tremor in his hand was quieter when he drove away. That night, as streetlights buzzed above, Jalen sat beside Elaina beneath the umbrella. He glanced up. "How did you know?" "About what?" "That he was a detective, what happened in July, the baby." She didn't answer for a long time. Then, "Pain carries a smell, guilt carries heat, and some stories ride with a person like old perfume. I don't know names, baby. I know echoes." Jalen wrote that down in the margins of his notebook. The next day the officer returned. This time he brought gloves for her. The next week he brought hand warmers for everyone on the block. By the end of the month he came not in uniform, but in plain clothes, just another man learning how to be useful again. Elaina never left her crate, but somehow the world kept coming to her, and each time it did, it left lighter. There was a narrow alley behind the liquor store on 59th, wedged between 2 graffiti-tagged dumpsters and a rusting chain-link fence that buzzed with old wires and forgotten promises. No one ever walked there unless they had to. Too dark, too quiet, too many stories in the cracks. Elaina always glanced toward it, Not every day, not with urgency, but the way her eyes softened when the wind came from that direction told Jalen everything. Something lived back there, something sorrowful, and sorrow, he'd learned, called to her like a song. The girl showed up on a Wednesday late afternoon, sky bruised with stormlight, wind snapping old flyers loose from utility poles. Jalen was seated on a curb with his notebook open when he saw her. Thin, jittery, clothes stained with grime, a pink hoodie zipped all the way up though it was warm that day. She stumbled out of the alley like a ghost crawling into its own exorcism. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. She just walked straight into the middle of the road and collapsed. Jalen ran before the car even braked. The driver, an older man delivering crates of oranges, hit the brakes just in time, cursing and honking, but the girl didn't move. Jalen dropped to his knees beside her. She was breathing. Barely. Elaina was there before he could yell. Her shadow passed over them like a curtain. She knelt slowly, her hands hovering just above the girl's skin, not touching, just reading. "She's been kept somewhere cold," she murmured. "Kept and moved and hurt, but she's fighting." Jalen swallowed hard. "What do we do?" Elaina looked at him, her voice low but sharp. "You go to the church, ask for Pastor Rhonda. Tell her. It's one of theirs, she'll know what that means." Jalen nodded, bolted down the block, heart hammering. By the time he returned, Pastor Rhonda was already there, hair wrapped tight, Bible clutched in one hand, phone in the other, barking orders to a woman named Denise. She didn't hesitate. Just knelt beside Elaina and said, "This one from 71st? Elaina didn't answer. She just gently pulled the hoodie zipper down halfway. There, beneath layers of dirt and fear, was a small tattoo. A cheap butterfly, its wings cracked by scars. Pastor Rhonda closed her eyes. "We've seen that mark before," she turned to her assistant. "Call Safe Lighthouse. We got another one." Later, Jalen would learn the full story. The girl's name was Maribel, 17, had run away from her foster home after being trafficked across 3 states. She was part of a ring that had been operating out of abandoned basements, luring kids through fake social media jobs, holding them with threats and pills and shame. She had escaped the night before. No one else had seen her, but Elaina had. The newspapers wouldn't tell the full truth. They never did. They called it a miraculous intervention by concerned community leaders. The police took credit. So did a city task force that hadn't stepped foot on 59th in years. But word got around anyway. People started leaving notes. On Elena's crate now. Not money, not food, just notes. He stopped using, says it was your tea. She slept through the night for the first time since Mama died. Thank you for seeing me. And something else began too. A little girl brought her sketchpad and drew pictures of Elena's hands, calling them magic. An ex-con came by every Thursday with fresh soup, no questions asked. And once a week, quietly, without a badge, the officer with the shaking hand sat and listened. Elaina still didn't take praise, still didn't let anyone call her a healer. "I'm just a witness," she told Jalen one evening, as the streetlight buzzed to life above them. "People don't need miracles. They need someone who stays when the hurting shows." Jalen looked up from his notebook. "What happens when you can't stay?" She looked at him slowly. "Then you make sure someone else learned how." His throat tightened. "You mean me?" She smiled, didn't answer. But she didn't have to. That night, as the wind curled through the alley and the stars flickered behind city haze, Maribel sat beside the milk crate for the first time. Quiet. Healing, whole enough to start again, and Elaina added one more name to her folded list, folded it gently, and tucked it back near her heart. December slapped the city in the face that week. Icy wind rattled the power lines like bones, and the sidewalk salt crunched under boots that moved faster than usual. Most corners looked abandoned by midday, but not the one on 59th and Halstead. Elaina was still there, wrapped in her quilt layers, boots laced, hands gloved in leather mitts. Some teacher had dropped off with a note that simply read, "For the fingers that find pain before it screams." She sat calm as ever, milk crate steady beneath her, thermos steaming beside her, Jalen's notebook tucked in his backpack at her feet. But trouble had been circling for days. Jalen saw it first in the way two men in dress shoes came by one afternoon, snapping photos from a distance. The kind of men who didn't make eye contact, clipboard types. From the city, probably. They didn't speak to her, didn't speak to anyone, but Jalen saw one of them mouth the words, liability. On Thursday they came back, this time with a woman, young, blonde, shivering in a trench coat too thin for Chicago air, armed with a nervous smile and a badge that read, Department of Community Safety and Clean Streets Initiative. Jalen was sitting on the curb next to Elaina when she approached. "Good afternoon, Mr. Jones," she said, flipping through her clipboard like the paper might shield her from judgment. Elaina didn't speak, just sipped her tea and waited. The woman cleared her throat. "We've received some concerns about loitering, unauthorized care, obstruction of pedestrian traffic, and we have to follow protocol." Jalen sat up straighter. "She's not loitering. She lives here." The woman's smile strained. "I understand you're a friend, but ask." "The EMT's who she saved," he snapped. "Ask the girl she found behind the alley. Ask the city councilwoman who dropped off those mittens." More people had started gathering. The barbershop door swung open. A mom from the corner stoop crossed the street. Even Officer James, now out of uniform, hoodie pulled low, walked up slowly, arms crossed. The woman shifted. "Well, we have to consider safety and sanitation. There are complaints on record. This area is not zoned for medical treatment or sustained presence." "She's not presence," said the bodega owner, stepping up, voice firm. "She's protection." The woman blinked. "Sir, I'm sure she means well." Elaina finally spoke. Her voice was calm, barely above the wind, but it cut through the crowd like a church bell at midnight. "You ever lost someone because no one showed up when they could have?" The woman opened her mouth, closed it again. "I've been sitting here for years," Elaina said. "When the corners were colder and the folks walking by were more broken than bold, ain't nobody said nothing then. But now, when people come and sit and breathe a little easier, now it's a problem." The woman glanced around. She was surrounded now, a crowd of maybe 20, 50 by the minute, teachers, teens, grandmothers, men in uniforms and men with records, people who'd never agreed on anything were standing shoulder to shoulder, facing her like a storm wall. Elaina kept speaking. "You take me off this corner. You better have 10 more ready to take my place. One for the girl who hasn't spoken since she ran. One for the mother who walks with too many ghosts. One for the boy who's watching this right now, learning what silence costs." Jalen felt a chill crawl down his arms that had nothing to do with the cold. The woman on the clipboard was silent. Then, slowly, she reached into her coat and pulled out a laminated paper. A formal notice, but she didn't hand it to Elaina, she handed it to Jalen. "Technically," she said, voice low, "it's an order for removal, but technically, I don't see a problem worth solving here." She turned on her heel and walked away. Jalen looked down at the paper in his hands. The word eviction was printed in red at the top, but someone had crossed it out in pen. Below it, in handwriting far neater than expected, was scribbled, "Consider this corner an unofficial community healing zone, effective immediately." That night, someone brought lights. Soft, battery-powered string lights they taped to the awning above her. Someone else brought folding chairs. A teacher brought chalk and the sidewalk filled with messages. "She saw me before I saw myself." The city forgot us. She didn't. "Come here when your soul is tired." Elaina didn't say much after the crowd left. But just before, Jalen packed up his bag for the night. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "New name on the list," she said. He opened it. It read, "Jalen, for when I can't stay." The first snowfall came soft and quiet, like a memory trying to sneak back in. It dusted the sidewalk with hush, turned the broken concrete near Elena's corner into something almost sacred. Someone, probably one of the high school art kids, had outlined the patch of sidewalk around her crate with chalk white angel wings. When she sat there, it looked like she was about to rise. But Elaina never rose for applause. She rose for need. Which is why on that bitter Tuesday morning, when a sleek black sedan rolled up and 3 people stepped out in wool coats and polished shoes, she didn't move. Jalen saw them first from across the street and narrowed his eyes. The man in front was tall with expensive glasses and a hospital badge clipped to his lapel. Gerald L. Minton, Executive Director, City Health Wellness. He didn't approach with the stiffness of city officials, no clipboards, no stern expressions. Just a cool confidence and a bouquet of language polished for press releases. "Miss Elaina," he said, voice smooth as marble. "It's truly an honor." She didn't respond. "I've heard stories about you for months. At first I thought they were, well, embellished. But then I saw the numbers." He crouched, trying to make his height less threatening. "Emergency calls down 32% within a 5-block radius. Mental health referrals up 40%. That's you." Elaina watched him, like he was a painting she wasn't sure was real. He smiled. "We'd like to partner with you." She blinked. "We have a new community integrative health program, funded by the state. We're creating wellness centers in every underserved neighborhood, staffed with both clinicians and local healers. You'd have your own space, a stipend, medical assistance, security. You could do so much more." Jalen stood beside her now, arms crossed. Gerald glanced at him, then back to Elaina. "Hey, it's real, it's respectful, and it's time, isn't it? Time to get off this cold corner?" Elaina turned to Jalen. "You cold?" she asked. He shook his head. She looked back to Gerald. "Then maybe it's not time." Gerald chuckled, politely. "Miss Elaina, you've done good work here, but we can scale you, impact more lives. Bring your gift indoors, let it breathe in a proper space." Elaina finally stood, not slowly, not weakly, like a wind-catching fire. "You want to bottle what don't belong to you," she said calmly. "Take it from a cracked sidewalk and put it behind a reception desk. You want to hand me a clipboard and a name tag and think that makes it more official." Gerald's smile faded. "You can't scale care that don't look at clocks. You can't schedule the moment somebody decides they still want to live." He stepped back. She lowered her voice. "This corner don't just hold people. It reminds them. That healing ain't something you check in for, it's something you return to over and over." The woman behind Gerald stepped forward now, younger, nervous. "But Miss Elaina, don't you deserve comfort? Resources? Heat?" Elaina looked around. At the thermos someone had already refilled. At the space heater the barbershop ran a cord out for. At the pile of folded blankets someone had left that morning, still warm, from a dryer. At the lights glowing above her crate like a halo. "I already have heat," she said. Later, Gerald left his card, just in case. Left it resting gently atop Jalen's notebook, like a question without punctuation. Jalen stared at. "It's City Health Wellness. Director's line. A 6-figure promise on glossy cardstock. Elaina never touched it. But that night she asked Jalen to read something aloud. It was a poem she kept in her coat pocket. Faded. Torn at the edges. You don't owe the world your relocation. You owe it your roots. Be the fire in the alley, not the chandelier in the lobby. People in need don't always open doors, but they'll walk toward warmth." Jalen folded the poem and looked at her. "You're not going to leave, are you?" She smiled. "Not yet. Not while people still walk by like they're half here." That Sunday, a child came back. The boy from the alley, Maribel's younger brother. He didn't speak, but he ran straight into Elena's arms. She held him, and that corner. It glowed again, not from lights, but from recognition. It started with a phone camera, Not a reporter, not a politician, just a teenager bored while waiting for the bus on 59th. She saw a crowd gathered around Miss Elaina's corner, nothing unusual there, and thought she'd film it. The block. "Which heals another one," the caption read. Half mocking, half curious. The video went live before anyone could blink. In it, a young man, maybe 20, shirt damp with sweat, panic etched into every movement, paces back and forth in front of Elena's crate. His hands shake. His voice is breaking. "I can't breathe. I can't do it anymore. I'm not okay." He stammers, over and over. People back away. One woman calls 911, but Elaina stays seated. She doesn't speak right away. She just opens, her arms like a doorway. The man crumbles to the ground beside her. And Elaina, she hums, a low sound, steady, warm. She presses a packet of dried lavender to his chest. Her other hand moves to the back of his neck, thumb tracing soft circles. Her mouth moves, silent at first, then barely audible. "You are still here. You are still here. You are still here." The man's breathing slows. Tears stream down his cheeks. He clutches her coat like a lifeline. By the time the paramedics arrive, he's sitting cross-legged on the sidewalk, his head resting against her knee like a child fallen into a memory of safety. The teen's video cuts out, but it's too late. The internet had seen it. By nightfall, it had 2 million views. By morning, 12 million news crews swarmed Halstead before sunrise. Microphones shoved through the crowd, reporters shouting questions over steam and wind. "Miss Elaina, are you a licensed therapist? Are you affiliated with a religious organization? Do you charge for your services? Are you a miracle worker?" She didn't answer, not once. Jalen fielded most of them. "She's not a miracle," he said. "She's a mirror. You see what you bring." The city scrambled. They couldn't co-opt her, not now. Too public. So they pivoted. Fast. By Monday, the mayor's office issued a statement. In light of recent events, the city of Chicago formally recognizes Elaina Jones as a community healing partner, protected under neighborhood autonomy statutes and public safety ordinances. A bench was placed near her crate, not to replace it, just to hold more people. The plaque on it read, "A sanctuary of staying, in honor of Miss Elaina, keeper of the warm." 3 days later, she was gone. Not in death, just gone. The milk. Crate was still there. So was the thermos. But her coat, her pouch of herbs, even her name list, gone. Jalen found a note folded beneath the bench. It was written in clean script on the back of a grocery receipt. "Some fires are meant to move. When one corner learns to hold itself, I go to the next. Keep watch, sugar boy. Keep watch." Weeks passed, then months, and still people came. Not to find her, but to sit where she sat, to share, to listen, to cry without shame, to heal without hurry. Pastor Rhonda started calling it the corner church. Jalen came every day. Sometimes he spoke. Sometimes he just handed out lavender tea and watched. And every once in a while, just as the sun dipped low and the wind picked up, someone swore they heard a hum, a quiet, steady melody, rising from nowhere, filling the block, like someone remembering your name before you even said it.